I want to bring a few sources. There's a sefer that's called Leket Rishimot, and also from Masechet Berachot and Daf Vav Amud Bet. Rabotai, please just try to understand me correctly. You'll see towards the end, everything's going to be fine, everybody's going to be okay. It's going to click. I don't want people getting upset. Rabotai, I was asked a question regarding doing Daf Yomi, Mishnah Yomi, or learning the material that you are able to understand. Because we have to understand, when a person learns Torah, you have to know what you learn, you have to understand what you learned. Now, I'm not chas v'shalom telling people not to do Daf Yomi, not to learn Mishnah Yomi. It's important because you do get information. But the question is, how much of that are you going to retain after you leave that class? So I want to read for you two things that about how to retain it and how to actually learn it. He says over here in Leket Rishimot, the Sefer, he says that the Mashgiach said that in order for a person to be able to learn Torah the proper way, you have to have gishmak, you have to have passion, enthusiasm. Because he says, not desire, a person has to be passionate. If a person learns Torah without any enjoyment, without any excitement, he does not give, he does not sacrifice his whole soul, and his spirit, he's not giving everything he has when he's not learning it with enthusiasm and excitement. You're missing in the proper way you have to learn because you're not learning the correct way. Just to come, check in, check out, Rabotai, is not such a healthy thing. I want to read for you also Masechet Berachot, that he says over here, in the second white line, he says, Rabbi Zera says, Agra de Pirka Rehita. The reward that a person gets for learning Torah is running. What does that mean? You have to go listen to a droshana from a rabbi, right? He's not telling you get reward for being there. He tells you get reward for coming there. I want to read for you Rashi. It's a very harsh Rashi. You have other Tosfot. You have other rabbis that try to work around Rashi. How could he say that? But I want to read for you and then I want to try to explain something else. Rashi says, Dibra Matchil Agra de Pirka. Listen to this according to Rabbi Zera. Iker Kibul Sachar HaBriot. The main reward the people get, Haratzim L'Shmo Drasha Mipi Chacham, that they run to hear a drasha from the words of a rabbi. Who's Chara Mirutze? The reward is what? The reward is running. 1 second. But I'm sitting there a whole hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. What happens to that reward? Rabotai, Rashi explains, Sha'arei Rubam, because majority of them, Einam Mivinim Lahamid Girsa Volomar Shemua Mipi Rabam La'achar Zman. Because many people, Rabotai, are not going to be able to establish or to re-say what the rabbi said after some time. Because they're not going to remember. She'ikablu schar limud, in order to get the reward also for learning. According to Rashi, it's very harsh. If that means if you do not understand what you're learning, that I'm going to be able to re-say it sometime later. According to Rashi, it says you're not going to get reward for learning at that moment, but you do get reward for running there, meaning for coming to the shur. Rabotai, if you look to other Mefarshim, they try to go around this whole piece. Of course, you get reward, because we say Anach amilim, hem amilim. We toil, they toil. Right? We get reward, they don't get reward. Even when a person toils and you don't understand, you get reward. So we need to understand that, Rabotai, how does this whole thing work? Honestly, I'll tell you the truth. To do Daf Yomi, kol hakvod, people that have time to do Daf Yomi, kol hakvod, Mishnah Yomi, kol hakvod, Rabotai. But we also need to remember one thing. It's not only about the quantity, it's also about the quality, how you do it. And Baruch Hashem, you have a lot of Rebbeim today that they are able to transfer the Daf Yomi Shi'ur clear, precise, concise. Some of them, Rabotai, which I've even seen, they do also Rashi at the same time, or they bring in the Rashi into the Gemara, which is very beautiful. Now guys, a person who does Daf Yomi, I want to just show you something, what it means not to only learn Daf Yomi and Mishnah Yomi, but at the same time, what you learn, try to review it. Try to review it the following day or week after. I'll explain to you what I mean. I just have over here, Rabotai, I have a whole calendar, but I just made over here something very simple. You could do this with Mishnah Yod, you could do this with Shas, it does not matter with what. But if you look over here, you have over here Masechet Berachot, Masechet Shabbat, Masechet Eruvin, Pesachim, Shekalim, Yoma, Sukkah, Beitzah, Rosh Hashanah, etc. You're going to continue. It's not a lot, Rabotai. It's not a lot. I just want to show you something beautiful. When a person, for example, let's just start Masechet Berachot. You start learning Masechet Berachot, say Dav Bet Amud Bet. For example, Dav Bet Amud Aleph. You start learning, you did that Gemara, the following day, what Gemara are you going to do? Gimel, correct? That means the day before you're going to go back to Bet. The following day you're going to do Dalet, you're going to go back to Gimel. Hey, Dalet, Rabotai, you're going to move like this, and you're always going to be able to review what you did in your Daf Yomi Shur, in your Mr. Yomi Shur. But Rabotai, listen to the beauty of this. It gets actually more beautiful once you finish it. Let's say once I'm finished with Masechet Berachot, you put an X. You guys with me? Now I'm starting Masechet Shabbat. Same concept, Rabotai. When I start Masechet Shabbat Dav Bet Amud Aleph, I go back and I start reviewing Masechet Berachot. So I'll put a slash like this. As I'm doing Masechet Shabbat, I'm reviewing my Masechet Berachot that I learned. Because the Gemara says anybody who learns and doesn't review, I don't want to say it. Everybody, I did the shurun before, I don't want to say it. You do Masechet Shabbat, by the time you get to page 64 of Masechet Shabbat, you already finished Masechet Berachot. That means you're basically in 2 cycles already Masechet Berachot. You read Daf Samach Dalet. Then you start with Aleph. You continue Shabbat, and you start with Aleph. Rabotai, this is how the program continues. You go into Shabbat, you finish Shabbat, you start Eruvin. Once you already finish Chazar or Shabbat, you go back to Berachot, you put a slash, again Chazara. Then you go to Shabbat, now you start doing another Chazara. While you are still continuing in Eruvin. Rabotai, do you know what's going to end up happening? You're doing 2-3 Masechet, you continue in the Daf Yomi, but at the same time you're Chazaring. By the time you finish over here, you're already 3 or 4 or 5 Masechtot in that you Chazar. The secret is why? Because when you do the Gemara the first time, it takes time to understand. It's really hard, it takes time to understand. But when you do it to review, it's a little bit easier. And it's at a much faster pace. You can even try to speed up the, put 1.5 to, 1.7 to try to speed it up. Rabotai, because we need to realize, Rabotai, it's not only about the learning just to put a check, but we also have to remember what we learn. And this is very important because the Gemara says, anybody who learns Torah, Rabotai, it's like a woman, Chas V'Shalom, we brought down in the Gemara, that it's like a person who plants and doesn't reap. Like a woman who has a baby, Rabotai, Chas V'Shalom, and then she miscarries the baby at the 9th month. So therefore, Rabotai, we have to try to put them hand in hand. You do the Daf Yomi, Mishnah Yomi, but at the same time go back, and you will see you're going to be able to retain your learning, and this is how you're going to be able to get schar limud, according to Rashi, even while you're understanding it, and that's how you actually build gishmak. The gishmak is not in the first time learning. In the first time learning, Rabotai, is gehenom. It's very hard until you really understand it. The gishmak comes when you start doing chazara. That's what Chazal tells us. A person who does chazara 101 times is guaranteed to never forget. Baruch Adonai L'olam, Amen, Amen, Rav Chaim Igal.